Good evening, dear Medyascope viewers. Welcome to This Week in Turkey. This evening, our guest will be Cenk Sidar, joining us from Washington, D.C. We'll be talking about the reactions coming from Turkish politicians over U.S. presidential candidate Joe Biden's comments on Turkey from 7 months ago. But first, let's take a look at this week's developments. We start our bulletin this week with an update on the coronavirus pandemic in Turkey.
Cases have been on a sharp rise as more than 1,000 new cases are confirmed on a daily basis since August 4th. Turkey ended a partial lockdown at the beginning of June in an effort to restart economic activities. On Tuesday, the Interior Ministry said it would step up inspections of businesses, transportation, beaches, wedding halls, and other facilities to make sure they're complying with rules on hygiene, mask wearing, and physical distancing. Moreover, some provinces have already started introducing new curbs on senior citizens, such as barring them from markets, funerals, or public transportation during peak hours. The Health Ministry's Coronavirus Advisory Board is currently not considering new social distancing restrictions. Health Minister Fahrettin Koca on Wednesday shared details about the occupancy rates at pandemic hospitals. He indicated that intensive care units are 64.8% full, while 53.3% of service beds and 31.7% of ventilators are full. Yet, medical professionals are worried Turkey may lose control of the coronavirus outbreak. Resignations have been increasing due to exhaustion among doctors. The Central Committee Chair of the Turkish Medical Association, Professor Dr. Sinan Adıyaman, spoke to Medyascope regarding the precautions taken by the Ministry of Health and the weight on the shoulder of medical professionals. According to Adıyaman,
the second peak of the first wave is starting rather quickly. During the first peak of the first wave, the health ministry told us to stay at home. And that's what we did. We self-quarantined. The ministry made an effort to impose precautions. Now we are quickly approaching the second peak of the first wave, yet no precautions to curb the movement and circulation of the population are being taken. They have to take a look at every province, every neighborhood, one by one. We have always said that as the Turkish Medical Association. Precautions must be taken, and yet this has yet to be done. And because of this, the virus is spreading among the population uncontrollably. The fact is, the occupancy rates at hospitals in Ankara have increased tremendously. We have information coming from city and university hospitals. Can you imagine, in a university hospital's emergency unit, intubated patients are lying on stretchers? I'm not saying this to cause panic. I'm saying this so that people start taking their precautions again. Health workers are exhausted at this point. The reality of the situation is being concealed. We have to listen to the outcry coming out locally. Medical professionals are exhausted. Their personal rights have been transgressed. Medical personnel are losing their lives. 28 of them being doctors. A total of 55 medical personnel have lost their lives. This is according to our data, as there has been no official study conducted on the part of the ministry regarding the condition of medical professionals fighting the coronavirus. Medical staff, by working non-stop, were able to fight against the coronavirus and brought the fight up to a certain point at the end of the first peak. But since June, due to a premature reopening process, where all precautions were lifted at once, as opposed to being lifted in stages, they have seen that all their efforts went in vain. And now, patient numbers are back to what they were in April. And those are only the ones with a positive PCR result. According to data coming to us, we believe that the number of active positive cases are 10 times higher.
10 misline yakın daha fazla aktif hasta olduğunu düşünüyoruz.
President Erdogan on Wednesday had said he would announce very good news on Friday, which would usher in a new era for the country. Indeed, the announcement came earlier today on August 21st. Erdogan announced that Turkey had discovered the largest natural gas reserves in its history in the Black Sea. He said 320 billion cubic meters of natural gas have been found in the Tuna 1 zone by the Fatih drill ship. Erdogan says the aim is to make newly discovered natural gas in the Black Sea available for usage by 2023, a symbolic date as it marks the 100th anniversary of the Republic of Turkey. Turkey's drilling ship Fatih has been operating since late July in an exploration zone known as Tuna 1, about 150 kilometers north of the Turkish coast in the western Black Sea.
An interview by the New York Times from December 2019 conducted with the U.S. Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden has created sharp criticism in Turkey's political circles.
An 8-month-old New York Times interview footage conducted with the U.S. Democratic presidential candidate and the former Vice President Joe Biden created a recent uproar in the Turkish government. In the old video that floated to the top of Turkey's political agenda, Biden calls for the removal of President Erdogan, which he refers to as an autocrat, through supporting the opposition to defeat him in the upcoming elections. Bringing Biden's interview back into the headlines also gathered critical commentary from U.S. President Trump, the AKP government, and the Turkish opposition. In the New York Times interview, Biden further stated that he's very concerned about President Erdogan's approach to the Kurds in Turkey, his military cooperation with Russia, and access to the U.S. airfields in the country. Presidential spokesperson Ibrahim Kalın denounced Biden's commentary as based on pure ignorance, arrogance, and hypocrisy. Minister of Communication Fahrettin Altun also tweeted that Biden's remarks reflect the games being played against Turkey and their interventionist attitudes. The critical commentaries also came from the main opposition party CHP. CHP spokesperson Faik Öztürk stated that our democracy and end of war for freedom do not need any imperialist favors on Twitter. In accordance, condemning statements came from the head of the Nationalist Movement Party Devlet Bahçeli as well. MHP President Bahçeli stated that Biden's act was against the principles of alliance and that there is no excuse for his such remarks. The latest statements came from the US President Trump on August 19th, where he highlighted his strong ties with President Erdogan at a White House press conference, stating that Turkey is definitely capable of handling the work by itself. We have really good relations with Erdogan. Regarding the possible reasons behind Biden's such commentary to the New York Times, Yunus Emre Erdoğan analyzed the motives behind Biden's statements with the following evaluation.
Why are Biden's statements so rough and far from a diplomatic jargon? Because we should not forget that this is a commentary made during the US primary election process. At that time, the candidate who made the most anti-Turkey statements was being applauded, as the political agenda was Turkey's Peace Spring operation and Trump's withdrawal from Syria. The candidates who made anti-Turkey statements were on the headlines. This is why both at the presidential debates and in interviews like these, making anti-Turkey statements is a common move to play in order to win the US primaries.
This evening, our guest is Cenk Sidar. Mr. Sidar is the co-founder and CEO of GlobankWonks. It's a platform that provides expert knowledge on thousands of topics, from public health and finance to law and cybersecurity in all regions to deliver actionable insights. Good evening, Mr. Sidar. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
So Biden's comments, which he made 7 months ago, have led to reactions in Turkey, both by government officials as well as opposition politicians. Is Turkey right to take issues with these comments?
Sure, definitely. I mean, Biden's statements that he made on Turkey about 7 months ago are definitely undiplomatic and unacceptable for any government. So any statement coming from another political leader, another country's political leader, is very insulting when they talk about potential regime change or toppling the leader. I think Turkey and Turkish government and also opposition has full right to be upset about those statements.
Yes, let's maybe talk about the reactions. Interestingly, this is an issue where the opposition and the government circles have agreed upon. However, opposition leaders have also remarked on the fact that the government is taking issue with it at this particular moment. So could you perhaps tell us about the timing of the reaction coming from Turkey? At the time, obviously, Biden was still a candidate to become a presidential candidate for the Democratic Party. Sanders was leading the polls. And now, yes, so what can you tell us about the timing?
Sure. I think the main concern about the timing is he made those statements about 7 months ago, I think about in January timeframe. And those statements were not directed for any political purpose. It was a very think tank-like conversation with New York Times journalists. And obviously, he sounded like he was sharing his sincere opinions and views on Turkey. And this is not surprising for anyone who knows Joe Biden. In 2014, he delivered a speech at Harvard University. And in his speech then, he criticized Turkish foreign policy heavily when he was the vice president. So Biden has definitely a biased view against Turkey. And those views are probably cultivated throughout his time, during his vice presidential period. But I think it's important that for Turkish government and Turkish stakeholders to start building dialogue and trust with Joe Biden and try to explain Turkish views on different foreign policy issues. Because it's still too early to talk about who may win. Biden seems like he is 7-8 points ahead of the incumbent president Donald Trump, but it's very likely that Biden could be the president, and Turkey would be dealing with a president that would have a very biased view against Turkey. But on the other hand, one should also remember Donald Trump is the only and the first president who wrote a very insulting letter directed to the president of Turkey. So unfortunately, Turkish foreign policy or Turkish government has been facing two potential US presidents that have not the most favored views on Turkey and Turkish foreign policy in coming years.
Yes, I'd like to also talk about future Turkey-US relations in the case that Biden does get elected. But before we come to that, Mr. Sidar, I'd like to ask you, do you think that these comments could strengthen Erdogan's position domestically? Will the statement serve Erdogan in any way, especially considering that the opposition leaders are also on his side? Ali Babacan, Ahmet Davutoğlu, Muharrem İnce, a spokesperson even for the CHP, have underlined that they do not need the support of foreign actors to gain electoral success. So do you think this could be a domestic advantage for Erdogan?
I'm not sure if there will be a domestic advantage for Turkey, but it's definitely a major disadvantage for the opposition parties. Now, the opposition parties may look like on the same page with potential future American president who has used very harsh language against Turkey, and we all know that Erdogan is a skilled politician who can mobilize his own voters against the foreign enemy, and the foreign enemy last especially 4 or 5 years for Erdogan is the West. But also, you earlier asked about the timing of the situation, the timing of the reaction that provided to those statements. I think one view is that the Erdogan government has used this speech that was made 7 months ago just to mobilize his own voter base. I don't agree with that. The reason is the same thing happened with 2014 Harvard speech. Only after a few weeks later, the Turkish government realized that Biden went to Harvard University and delivered very anti-Turkish speech, anti-Erdogan speech. And even after the speech, Erdogan not knowing about the content, they had a very sincere phone conversation between Biden and Erdogan. 2 weeks later, he basically blamed Biden using a very harsh language, and Biden apologized after that. So I think this is more related to diminished capacity of Turkish foreign policy and intelligence. For any company or for any business leader, if there's a statement made against you, against your organization, you get real-time alert about those negative sentiment, and you can take a position. It's very embarrassing if the Turkish government didn't know about this speech, for 7 months, even though that was an open source, speech that was made and publicly available on different videos. So I think it may be related to the diminished capacity of Turkish foreign policy as well.
And just to add to that, Mr. Sidar, Murat Yetkin actually wrote about whether or not Erdogan was aware of this interview or not. And according to what he was able to find out, it wasn't through the foreign ministry channels that he was aware of the interview, but through a routine informative note by Fahrettin Altun himself. So yes, Erdogan was indeed aware of this interview. lastly, I'd like to ask you if, in fact, Biden is elected in the upcoming presidential elections in the United States, how do you see it affecting Turkey-U.S. relations? I mean, during Trump's administration, as we know, the relations between Turkey and U.S. were based on the relationship between the two country leaders. And if Biden is elected, is there potentially a chance that the relations between the two countries can return to, let's say, a normal standard of diplomacy that is based on institutional relations? So how will it in effect change Turkish-American relations, do you think?
I mean, unfortunately, there is a extremely negative sentiment towards Turkey, not only in Republican circles, but also in Democratic circles. Maybe more so in Democratic circles because traditionally Democratic foreign policy in the US is built more upon values and ideals, whereas Republican foreign policy is more transactional. And Trump is the great example of transactional foreign policy driver. So, but still, no matter of the current crisis we've been facing, if Turkish government and the Turkish foreign policy, I think, should be supported the Democratic candidate here, is because basically the Biden presidency, despite all the negative sentiment, would pursue more collaborative foreign policy in the Middle East, more predictable. So Turkish foreign policy will not be facing risk and challenges, following tweets sent by the Donald Trump or any uncalculated moves. If we look at last 3 years, there were many positions taken by President Trump, like very anti-Turkey positions, as well as issues that Turkey was extremely against, like the change in the capital of Israel is one of them. Is basically, there are so many areas that Donald Trump and Turkish foreign policy are on different sides. However, Biden foreign policy would rely on more ideas and principles, and we can predict Biden foreign policy team would be relying more on regional allies like Turkey for the stabilization and the continuation of the regimes in the Middle East. But it's very difficult to predict what the second term of Trump would bring, because as you know, the second terms of presidents usually are braver in terms of taking foreign policy moves because they are not facing another elections. So they accomplish more foreign policy objectives they have. So I think that can be very, very dangerous for Turkey if Donald Trump is elected as president again.
Some have commented that if Biden were to be elected, the United States would perhaps turn more inwards and be less, active in its, foreign policy, and especially in the Middle East. But for example, his comments on the Kurdish issue, which were part of, the televised, the interview to the New York Times, do you think it could potentially become a roadmap in terms of its approach to Turkey and the Middle East at large?
I mean, it seems like he is currently the most pro-Kurdish, he may be the most Kurdish politician, the president in the US, and he has an understanding of the Middle East politics. He served as vice president, he was at the Senate, so he understands the issues. But one thing we can still rely on is if and when he comes to power. So he will be facing the realities on the ground. No matter what he said on Turkey, he will realize that Turkey is an important player in the region, and the US government must work with Turkey to stabilize the region and for the prosperity in the area. So I think the pre-presidential statements of any politician, and we saw that with Barack Obama about the Armenian genocide issue, we saw that on many areas. So the US presidents must act on the main principles of the United States, and having solid and friendly relationship with Turkey is one of the major interests. So that's why I don't expect those aggressive, unacceptable, and undiplomatic statements from Biden will continue, because I think he needs to be educated about Turkey in the West. These days, there's a perception that everyone anti-Erdogan is democratic and is a positive actor, but that's not true. I mean, we see that a lot of Gülenist actors in the US are exploiting the fact that Erdogan is not liked, but also I think Biden and whoever the new administration will be should understand that the future of Turkey must be democratic and secular, not coming from any Islamist ideology or any cult or secret organization that has been located anywhere in the world. So I think that's a major difference. And it seems like Biden doesn't understand it today.
And yes, just to add to that, another thing I think Biden also needs to perhaps understand when he says that he supports the opposition is that there's a very strong anti-American sentiment within the opposition as well.
And what opposition he has been talking is very vague. I mean, is he talking about legitimate political opposition in Turkey, Republican People's Party, or E Party, or Gelecek parties, or DEVA, or is he talking some illegitimate political groupings in the U.S. or anywhere in the world that has been maybe potentially behind illegal activities against Turkey, like happened in July 15th. So I think Biden is also confused about it. I think what I understood from his speech, it didn't sound like he was supporting legitimate opposition in Turkey. I think he's really confused about it, and he needs to be educated about various actors, and he needs to understand that the future of democratic and stable Turkey must come from secular and legitimate actors in Turkey. So that's a major difference, and hopefully that will be made clear to him by Turkish foreign policy and Turkey stakeholders, including the opposition.
Mm-hmm. Cenk Sidar, thank you so much for having joined us this evening.
Thank you, it was a pleasure.
18-year-old IE died on August 19th in the hospital where she was being treated after attempting suicide. She had been abducted and raped by a sergeant named Musa Orhan on July 16th. The incident took place in the southeastern city of Batman, which is largely Kurdish. The death of the young Kurdish woman who took her own life to end her ordeal from the sexual assault she suffered led to outrage on social media.
When IE attempted to commit suicide on July 16th, she left a suicide note telling how she was raped by Musa Orhan at his friend's house and how he threatened to kill her if she reported him. IE wrote that Musa had said, "No one will believe you. You are defenseless." After IE's family found the suicide note, they lodged a complaint for her perpetrator Musa Orhan's arrest. He was detained briefly on July 17th, but was freed under judicial provision. Musa initially denied the charges, but after the forensic report concluded that IE was raped and drugged, he changed his story. Musa remained free under judicial provision from July 17th until August 19th, when IE lost her life in the hospital where she had been under medical intervention since July 16th. Regarding the family's unheard call for justice, IE's father Fuat E stated the following: "I am ashamed of the Republic of Turkey. Turkey is staying silent. No one has asked about us, and there are so many other victims. These crimes should not go unnoticed. I want justice." His release created a public outrage across social media where more than 350,000 tweets were posted under the Musa Orhan hashtag. Through the support of public reactions, the province of Siirt issued a warrant for his arrest, and Musa turned himself into the police on August 19th. IE's death came following the rising tide of femicides in Turkey, which, along with the state's initiative to withdraw from Istanbul Convention, has created a new wave of women movement in Turkey. Fidan Ateşelim evaluated the array of incidents to Medyascope broadcast with the following words: "Even though there was a forensic report that substantiated Musa Orhan's sexual misconduct, and even though there were multiple arrest claims, the court here freed him under judicial provision, and this obviously caused a great level of public outrage. Now, the public has significantly higher and more sensitive behavior towards incidents like these, because every single day, women are being murdered."
During the night of August 18th, police tore down the Istanbul Metropolitan Municipality's posters informing citizens about the Kanal Istanbul project. The posters, which read either the Kanal or Istanbul, were taken down on the orders of the governor's office.
Kanal Istanbul Known as President Erdogan's Crazy Project, seeks to carve out an artificial waterway between the Sea of Marmara and the Black Sea. Although environmentalists and experts have been warning that the project will lead to disastrous environmental consequences, the government is still insistent on it. Istanbul Metropolitan Municipality's posters informing citizens about the Kanal Istanbul project were hung at the overpasses across Istanbul, yet were taken down by police on the night of August 18, on the orders of the governor's office. Our posters on Kanal Istanbul project, which will bring irreversible damages and a great destruction, have been unlawfully taken down, Istanbul Metropolitan Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu said on August 19th. İmamoğlu further added, "Unfortunately, a handful of people are now doing whatever they want, even without needing the judiciary's decision. Unlawfulness has become the country's biggest problem. Although I told the governor yesterday afternoon that the posters will be changed on Friday without even being able to show tolerance for 24 hours, our police have been made to tear down the posters." İmamoğlu, who is from the main opposition Republican People's Party, has been campaigning against the project on environmental grounds. He has indicated that the project would trigger demographic change, destroy cultural heritage, and exacerbate traffic. He has also said that the investment the project requires should be spent on the real necessities of people instead.
In other news, earlier today, President Erdogan ordered for the conversion of the Kora Museum located in the Fatih district of Istanbul into a mosque. The building was constructed as a monastery in 534 during the Byzantine period. After Istanbul was taken over by the Ottomans in 1453, it was converted into a mosque in 1511, just like Hagia Sophia. It was converted into a museum by a Council of Ministers decree in 1945. This museum status was annulled by Erdogan in 2019, taking the Kora out from the property of the Education Ministry, transferring it to the Directorate of Religious Affairs. The decree allowing worship in the Kora was released today, although no date has been set for the first prayer. Hagia Sophia too had been reconverted into a mosque and has been serving as such since July 24th.
That's all from This Week in Turkey. See you next Friday at 9 p.m. Good night.